evening, everyone, and welcome to Shit Moms Won't Say. My guest tonight is a big believer that storytelling can change the world, and I tend to agree. If you are a theater nerd like me, you may know her from her incredibly impactful work on The Line. If you are a horror nerd, also like me, you may know her from her work in Slender Man. Either way, she is an incredible writer, director, actor, mom of one, Jessica Blank. Welcome to my show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And I see the Line poster in the background.
Yes, that's true. It's right there.
A very small plug. She's like, you see it. It's nothing. It's just you can't even notice it. I love. I asked you before we started filming, are you a Jess or a Jessica? And you said you're sort of like versatile.
Yes.
I am not.
No, you're strictly Jess.
I'm very I get very heated when people call me Jessica because I feel like they don't know me. Like if they're calling me Jessica, like that's not who I am.
Right.
You're totally. Like, you're really more of a Jessica, you said. Like that's
most people call me Jessica, and then eventually, like, if I hang out with somebody enough, like Jess happens organically. I used to be Jessie when I was a
just
kid.
Gonna ask.
But that went away. Well, actually in 7th grade, I had a boyfriend named Jesse. And so then that was just weird, right? So people stopped calling me Jessie, and then I decided I really didn't like it. So definitely no Jessie, but Jessica, okay. Whatever.
Well, we can agree. I was going to say, I think we can at least both agree that like Jessie is horrible. So I'm glad that we are. Jessie. Okay. So for everybody who's very confused about who's who out there, I'll go by Jess, you go by Jessica, and
That's good.
Call it a day. Perfect. So let's get into the Big Mom 3. So first question, the Big Mom 3, big curveball. Did you always know you wanted to be a mom?
I did. Actually, okay. I always knew I didn't always know like how many kids I wanted to have or anything like that, but I always knew I wanted to have at least one. And I also always knew I wanted a girl. And sort of kind of knew I would have a girl. Like
mission accomplished. Yeah.
Sort of like saw her before she existed.
You're not the first person to say that on. Like I've had a couple people like I visualize like who they were before giving birth.
Yeah, I just kind of could feel her in advance, I think. And so yeah, but I like, so my sister's 10 years younger than me. So I grew up as an only child and having a sibling.
Sure.
In a certain way, and like both things were cool. Like I enjoyed both experiences. So I've always was very kind of just open-minded about like one kid, more than one kid. We'll see what happens. But I knew I wanted at least one.
And how old is your daughter?
She's 11 and a half.
11 and
12 in December.
Okay. So we're not in teenage years yet.
No.
We're getting there.
But I mean, tween is a thing for sure.
Tween's a thing. Tween's a tough thing. Yeah.
Tween happened during the pandemic.
Fun.
Like I mean, she's amazing. She's amazing. But it was an interesting transition to happen during that period of time. It was like, oh, wow. Like she really sort of entered the pandemic one kid and came out in like a totally different developmental stage.
Insane. That age is my biggest fear. Really? So I have one daughter. She's going to be 2 in October, and my wife is pregnant with our second daughter, who will be born in March. So we're starting a coven. We think it's just like easier. Yeah, it's easier that way. A lot of female energy in the house, but that middle school age. Whew.
Yeah, it's real, but it's also kind of great. I mean, I think hormones are hormones, right? Like hormones, my hormones make me crazy. So, I wouldn't expect any less from an 11-year-old, but I think whatever relationship is there that's been built underneath, it's still there.
Yeah.
And, I try to be cool. So, I mean, she doesn't think I'm cool. But she also kind of still does. You know what I mean? So she's like, oh, Mom, you're so embarrassing, whatever. But actually, you're kind of cool.
She also has a mom that does cool shit. So it's hard. It has to be hard for her to be like, well, my mom's not cool.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm not
that.
I'm not square. But right. I am, according to her, I am definitely old.
Okay.
I'm like super old and like don't know what things are or who anybody is or anything like that.
And that's just reality. I don't know who anyone is and what anything is. The fact that I can like navigate an Instagram platform like in any type of successful way is mind blowing. But I know the kids like TikTok supposedly. So
the kids do like TikTok. Kids do like TikTok.
Incredible. Okay, second question of Big Mom 3. What is, and whatever comes into your head, just go for it. What is the shittiest or most backhanded piece of advice or like thing said to you by another mother or parent?
It's weird. I have this, I don't have a lot of friends who are parents, which is like, it makes me sad, but it's because we're like weirdo artists. Like all our friends are single or like artists, like less artists have kids, right?
It's true. They're,
especially in New York. Weirdos. Yeah. So I don't know that I actually got any bad advice from individual parents that I know. But what I do remember is that when I was pregnant, it was like, well, so what year is it? It's time has become so weird, but it's 2021. Sadie was born in 2009.
Okay.
So it was like that like mom blogger thing had been like happening for a while. And it was very sort of dominant, this like online culture of like it being hip and cool to complain about how terrible being a mom was. Right. And how like, and all the like cool, smart moms were like online being like, ugh, my life is over. I'm so tired. I have no freedom all the time. Right. And it really kind of freaked me out when I was pregnant. Right. Like this sort of like cool complaining culture that was like, that was the model for like what how the smart moms felt about being parents. And I was like, I don't want to feel that way. Is it going to be like that? Like, am I going to feel like I don't have an individual identity anymore? Or like, I don't have a life or whatever. And like, of course, then I had my kid and like the answer, of course, is no. I mean, I am very tired and have been tired for 12 years, but like, I still have the same life. If anything, like I work more since having a kid. I'm more productive creatively and all of that since having a kid. Like I don't feel like, I mean, I wanted to go to Burning Man the first few years she was alive and didn't quite feel like comfortable just being totally unreachable for a week at Burning Man when I had a toddler. But like, other than that, like, no major sacrifices except sleep.
I'm with you. And it's funny because you said like creatives like don't have kids. It's not that they don't give it, but a lot of creatives don't. Like that's our friend group too. They're a bunch of theater weirdos.
Right.
Single, gay, queer, like somewhere in between. What kind of sucks though is it sounds like you had a similar experience. When you had a kid, you became more creative.
Totally.
It taps into a different part of you that you like didn't even know you had.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I can do this thing too. Cool.
Yep, for sure. And I think, look, I mean, there are definitely aspects of how my life is set up that made that possible and continue to make it possible. Like I have a partner who's totally committed to 50-50 parenting, right? Like if I didn't have that, it would be harder. But I also, honestly, if I didn't have that, I probably wouldn't have had a kid.
I'm with you. Yes, I'm with you on that for sure. Absolutely. And you know what's cool also is that culture of like mom complaining has really shifted. Like there's still some women that I see online that like they just love to talk shit about their kids and their spouse. And I don't like that. I don't get it. I wouldn't do it with my friends and I wouldn't do it online.
Right.
There's this big shift though of women that are like, that's fucked up. Like, I don't want to do that. And that's
it's totally better now. It was like a weird trend that just happened to coincide with when I got pregnant.
It did the wrong time. Gotcha. Okay, cool. Third question of the big mom 3. What is a skill or superpower you had before becoming a mom that you feel has really helped you as a mom?
I mean, I'm a director.
Yes. Yes, you are.
And a producer. I think like a producer a lot too. And I think, both of those skill sets, which overlap with each other a lot, also overlap with parenting, right? Like I'm really, really, really good at time management, right? I'm good at carrying mental load. I'm good at like I have 5 jobs in the arts basically, right? Like I'm good at juggling multiple projects at once and balancing them all out with each other, and keeping a lot of different balls in the air, and also at least trying to stay attuned to all of the people that I'm working with and my collaborators at the same time and stay connected in that process while being really busy. And like, basically that's parenting also.
100%. Yeah, for sure. Awesome.
And the time management thing is huge. Like the time management thing is actually connected to why I was able to become a parent and get more creatively productive, is because I was already good at time management, but then it really upped my game because I was like, okay, well, these are the times when I have childcare, or these are the times when Eric's got Sadie, or whatever it is. And like, that's when I'm working.
Yeah.
Right. So like any sort of like vestiges of like mystical romantic approach to the creative process, or like I feel inspired or I don't feel inspired or whatever, went completely out the window. I was like, oh, this is the time I have to work. I got to work.
Yep. I have an hour to write right now.
Yeah, totally.
That's it.
And then you do it.
Then you do it. That's like with the show. And I'm like, I'm flexible enough on filming. However, here's the preference.
Yeah.
Here's really what works. And because it's all moms, it's generally like, oh no, I get that for sure. But you're right. You have like windows of time where you just have to be creative in them, whether you feel like it or not.
Yep. Totally. Totally. And I actually think that's a great thing for artists. Like I teach my students that like, it's not actually about whether you feel inspired. It's not actually about whether you feel like it. It's actually just about sitting down and making stuff.
Well, because inspiration could take forever,
Yeah, and it's triggered by the act of sitting down to do it.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right? If you don't sit down to do it, for like the inspiration doesn't come first. I mean, occasionally it does, but that's like a luxury. Right? Usually it's like you show up at work and then the muse comes or it doesn't, but you get stuff done regardless.
I like that. That's good. You just gave like a free class here. That was pretty good. I like, awesome. Yeah, you're welcome. That was great. Well, listen, speaking of like your creative process and all of the cool things you've done, you did something, I thought it was amazing last year. I hope it's something that you're super proud of. You put together the line. You created the line. You directed it. Is that correct?
Yeah, Eric and I wrote it and I directed it.
So what was amazing is the line was this amazing like documentary style theater experience, let's call it, because it wasn't a live play, because theater was not a thing last year. If everybody remembers, there was a global pandemic. For those of you who don't know, it's not over. Just checking, right? Get your vaccines. Anyway, you kind of put this thing together. It was streamed. It was one of like the first experiences back though. So, I mean, how did that work for you guys? Like, were you hesitant to do it? Were you excited to do it? Or like, did you know that you were bringing something that was very much needed at the time?
I mean, all of the above. So the line was a documentary play, an online documentary play based on interviews that we did with New York City medical first responders, and about the early days of the pandemic in New York City. And it was a rapid response play. So usually when we make, one of the things Eric and I do, we're writing partners, and we write for film and television and theater together. But one of the things we do is documentary theater. And so what that means is we go and we interview people and we record the interviews audio only and then have them transcribed. And then our plays are constructed from the interview transcripts. So usually to make one of our documentary plays, it's like about a 2-year process from when we start the interviews to having a finished play that's ready to go into rehearsal. Like we workshop text with actors a lot, where our process tends to be very actor intensive. We hear everything raw out loud and then start carving away. The line we did in 2 months. So we started the interviews in May of 2020 and it opened online in July.
How did you put together a rehearsal process for it?
It was so intense. I mean, the whole thing was super intense. I mean, the pandemic was really intense for everybody, but we had, when COVID hit, we had a play running at the Public Theater called Coal Country. Which was a documentary play that we wrote based on interviews we did with surviving family members of coal miners who were killed in the 2010 Upper Big Branch mine disaster in West Virginia. I'm really proud of the play. It's got original music by Steve Earle, and we actually just recorded and just finished the mix for the Audible version, which is coming out at the end of September. So the audio version is going to be available everywhere. I think September 20th is the release date. So we had just opened that play and when COVID hit. And so, for anybody who's like a theater person, the momentum involved in getting a play up and through previews and through opening, and like there's like a trajectory that it's on, and it stopped in one day, right? Which was hard and scary and weird. And we were talking to the Public Theater basically every day after that because nobody knew what was going to happen. We were like, are we going to reopen? Is it 6 weeks? What are we looking at? Right? Like, what's the future of this baby, right? That we just gave birth to.
Yeah.
And in that process, which was also like, it was a grief process. Like it was hard. We got asked by the 24-hour plays. They were doing these viral monologues throughout the pandemic. And the first round of them, they asked us to do something. And we said, great, can we do something documentary style? And they said, sure. And so we found a nurse. And so this was like in late March 2020. Wow. We found a New York City nurse who agreed to be interviewed by us. And we made a monologue from that interview. And as soon as we did that, it was like, oh, there's so many of these. Our city is going through this thing right now. We're sitting in our house trying to process it while feeling like we should be in a theater making our work, which is what we were doing right before this all happened. And so we pitched it to the public. We said, what do you think about a rapid response online thing? And at that point, nobody had done anything really digitally. And they were like, we don't know how to do it, but like, let's figure it out. So it was really intense. We did all of the interviews. Usually when we do interviews for a documentary piece, we're dealing with really intense material, but usually we travel somewhere that's like not our home to talk to people. And then we have time to digest the experience and talk about it a lot before we get into a workshop room with actors and transcripts. This was like, we had just been in New York City. It was about, we were upstate when we did the interviews. So we had a little distance, but like not really. And they were all over Zoom, and our interviews tend to be like 3 or 4 hours, and we were doing like 3 of them a day. So for like 10 days, just super fast. And then we went right into making the script. So it was really cathartic. It was really important. I'm really like, for us, like as part of our experience of the beginning of the pandemic, I think it was closer to us and to our own experience than any of the other documentary work we've done. It was also really hard.
I'm sure. Yeah. And living it,
Yeah. And it was also amazing. Like it was miraculous because there hadn't been streaming theater yet, really. Like there had been the one Richard Nelson play. And I think that was it before us because it was so early. And like nobody knew if it would work. So it was really an amazing thing to like see that it did, right? And to experience like, oh, we can still do this. And like, yeah, it's weird. And we don't get to like have coffee and hang out on a break and talk to each other and we're all on Zoom. But like, also it does feel like rehearsal and this does feel like an ensemble and we are making live theater and the impulse that's underneath it all is still there. And it definitely made me feel like, okay, theater's going to survive this.
Yeah. And I mean, and it did, you know what I mean? Like there's nothing better than like, I had my first opening night back over the summer and it was like, oh my God, like you forget because yes, like Zoom theater, as we've all like sort of affectionately referred to it, was consumable for long enough.
Yeah.
And you get to a point where you're like, okay, we're done now. But like, you guys really set the stage for it, you know, pun intended. Like it really wasn't being done. And I think a lot of people, to your point, were struggling with like, is this 6 weeks? Is this like, what is this? We've never dealt with this. So what is it? And like, to have the creative space be the thing that was like the most dangerous was nuts.
Yeah.
Nuts.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah. Well, because that's where we usually go for, and that's where we
safety.
usually go for solace and for comfort. And when something hard is going on, we go gather with our people in a room. And that was exactly what we couldn't do.
Yeah, you can't. So, you know, big thank you from like the whole community, right? Because that was, I mean, it was a huge deal. It was really, really cool and it was really impactful. And the documentary style theater it's very interesting. You know, like it works. It totally works. And you had a hell of a cast for that too. I mean, you had
sure did. I feel very grateful to have gotten to work with those actors. And also it was amazing because it was digital. We were able to have a cast that we wouldn't have been able to have otherwise because we had actors in New York. We had actors in LA. We had one cast member who was in London. Awesome. So, you know, we had this like amazing all-star international cast that wouldn't have been so easy to gather in a physical room in New York.
No, not for the length of like a typical run, right?
Yeah.
Like the public normally has like an end date, but like some shows don't, you know, like you can't always guarantee like someone from London can come in for an open-ended run. That's not reality. So that's very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, what's next? Now that like theater is a thing again and performing is a thing, what are we doing?
Well, we suddenly have a very full plate, which is wonderful. Some of the things I can talk about and some of the things I can't talk about yet. So the Audible version of Coal Country is about to come out. We are hoping that the play will return also live. Awesome. And so we're working on that. We have a couple of television projects going. We're working on, I think I can at least say this, we're working on a TV project with David Simon, and we're working on another TV project with Ed Burns, who also worked on The Wire, with a separate project with Ed.
Amazing.
So we're learning so much from them. They are both total masters.
Yeah,
and it's a really incredible learning curve to work with both of them. We are working on what will hopefully be the final draft of our script for the film version of our play, How to Be a Rock Critic, which we had been developing for a little while, but we really buckled down on it during the pandemic and sort of took apart and put the script back together while we were on our extended writing retreat trapped inside of our house.
Your vacation.
Yeah, right. And so that we've got that cooking right now, and we are about to start work on a documentary, like a documentary film that also has to do with rock and roll. But I think that's all that I can say about that one yet.
Well, we'll all keep an eye out. But so that's all you have going on then. That's it.
And you know, luckily TV production is starting up again. So we're both, you know, acting here and there. Also, Eric is shooting an episode of The Equalizer right now. He got beat up by Queen Latifah today.
I love that.
Totally cool.
Also, like so cool. So partners in life, partners in writing. A lot of people couldn't do it. You guys have a real good thing going on. Good for you.
It's good. We appreciate it. I mean, you know, after 18 months of pandemic, I was like, I won't lie that I was like totally psyched that he went to set today. I was like, that's great. Awesome. Go to work. I'm alone in my house. What is happening?
Right. You're like, we'll take on different projects for a little bit. That's
yeah,
okay.
right. But we are very full-time collaborators, especially right now. You know, it ebbs and flows, but right now the work on the projects that we have together really is very hands-on for both of us. So we are, you know, in our office making things all of the time.
That's so cool. That's amazing. All right, I have 2 final wrap-up questions, and then we're gonna call it a day. So, first question, I'm gonna wrap up here. Your daughter is 11, almost 12.
Mm-hmm.
What is something that you cannot live without as a parent at her current age?
Oh my God.
It could be anything. I've had people be like vodka, and I've had people be like,
yeah, right. I know. I was like, my brain just
know.
went to like wine.
Right.
But that actually was like much more of a thing right after bedtime when she was really little, like actually, than it is now. I mean, I feel like it's like time with her actually.
Yeah.
That like feels, it's because she just hit the age where it's like starting to feel really precious because she wants to do other things besides hang out with us, and like that's new, right? Like for so many years they're like pulling at your leg all the time, and it's like, oh my God, can I go to the bathroom in peace? And now she's like, I'm going to hang out with my friends for 3 hours, see you later, right? So when she's like, she said to me last night, she was like, you guys have been working really hard recently. I miss you. Like maybe this weekend, like we can just go to, we live in Williamsburg. She was like, we could just go to Bedford Avenue and like go to all the stores and just like walk around together. I was like,
she's a good kid. I love that. That's my dream. Good for you. That's awesome. Okay, last question. What is something that you wish you knew that you know now before becoming a mom?
I guess it goes back to that like online smart mom complaining culture. Like I think I would have been saved a lot of angst at the beginning if I already understood that like you can be a parent and be exactly yourself, right? Like you can remain yourself and do all of the things that you do. And yes, it changes your life, but also it doesn't have to in all of the ways that like white supremacist capitalist patriarchy says it does, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like that the model that we're handed for like what it's supposed to look like is actually bullshit. And every family is actually just designing their own model and figuring it out for themselves. And you can make that look a lot of different ways, and you can make that an expression of who you are, right? And I think I had a lot of fear before I actually had a kid that like the force of parenthood would suddenly like reorganize my entire life for me in a way that I couldn't be sort of creatively involved in, right? Yeah. And it was a huge relief to be like, oh no, actually we get to do this how we want to do it.
Yeah, and now you have this little person who gets to like join in if they want, gets to see all the cool stuff you're doing. Yeah. Oh, awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you? Social media, where can they follow you?
I'm so all over the internet. I am Jessica C. Blank. That's my middle initial is C. There's another Jessica Blank who's a graphic designer, and she's got like jessicablank.com. It's like cartoon animals. It's not my thing. It's totally fine, but it's like people are like, I went looking for you and found cartoon animals. I don't think that's you. No, that's not me. So I'm jessicacblank.com. I'm pretty active on Instagram. My Instagram's Jessica C. Blank. I think my Twitter is too. Yeah. I'm less active on Twitter.
Yeah. I love that though. I love that people could be like, oh, who did this cool thing? And then they look you up and it's like cartoon animals. That's very funny. The people be like, I didn't even know she was an artist. Like, that's great. Totally. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for tuning into Shit Moms Won't Say. We'll see you next week.
Shit Moms Won't Say!